Right on cue.
Yes, here we are, Friday evening. Welcome to another edition of the Houston Roundball Review presents Folks Talkin Sports. I'm Kris Gardner. Joining me, you see him right there, the youngster of the group, one of the youngsters of the group, Andy Yanez, with, let's see, Paul Slamma, Jamma, Community Impact Newspaper. You still claim Apollo Sports or anything like that?
Apollo Sports is a part of the official, I guess, parent company of Untitled Chapter.
Okay.
So we're affiliated.
All right. Good deal. And Willy Gibson should be joining us shortly, hopefully. James Mueller, the sports editor of the Daily Cougar, will try to pop in. I think he's at baseball, so he's going to try to join us for a few minutes as well. And then at the bottom of this hour, hopefully, Sam Khan from The Athletic, who I've known for a long time, will join us as well. We're going to talk probably more football and Big 12 and Dana Holgerson and all those great things. But Mr. Yanez, did you watch the 3 basketball games, men's basketball games this week, sir?
I wasn't able to watch the Tuesday clincher when they beat Cincinnati much, but I did watch Sundays against, actually I was there when they played SMU, and then also a little bit of the first half on Thursday against Temple.
What were your thoughts on the 3 games, how they looked? Did they look different to you at all, or what?
No, against SMU, the thing that caught my eye was really how it seemed like they were from the get-go. Obviously, they were more locked in. Really, SMU didn't ever seem to be in that game, and something that I know Kelvin Sampson mentioned. I think it might have been one of these availabilities. He had so many this week.
Yep.
Where he feels like his team has grown in the past 2 weeks. You know, they're better now than where they were 2 weeks ago, and I think something that you can kind of visually point to is in that SMU game where really the Mustangs had no answer for the Cougars in the paint. Josh Carlton and Fabian White were destroying them down low in the paint, and SMU switched up. Obviously, of course, their defense, they went to a couple of different zones throughout the game. They even tried full court pressure, and it especially whenever SMU was really kind of the first team that really started doing that when they first played up in Dallas, a completely different script where Houston was kind of bamboozled. They looked much better, much more prepared, much more polished on Sunday. They never seemed flustered. They never seemed like they were playing at a pace that they didn't want, which obviously that's one of the things that Houston wants to do. They want to control the pace. They want to slow the game down. And they were able to do that against SMU, against Cincinnati. Similar thing against Temple was where they had already clinched the American Athletic Conference, you know, but there's always the concern of, well, hey, we've played 2 games. So I guess that was the 3rd game in like a 5-6 day stretch.
35 days, and even Coach Sampson was going back. He even started mentioning Tulane last Wednesday, you know, so that'd been 4 and 8 days right there. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the only thing that UH did was jump out to a 15-0 lead and holding Temple scoreless for the first 6+ minutes of that game. So, I mean, it's been impressive, and obviously there's still Temple was able to claw back a little bit in that first half, but then Houston put them away, and honestly, it's impressive what they've been able to do, and they only have 1 game left in the regular season. It doesn't really matter much in terms of standings in the American Athletic Conference for UH. Obviously, they have the number 1 seed locked up, but something that was brought up that this might, at least in the regular season wise, is going to be the last opportunity for them to try to get a quad 1 win before conference play.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that. It doesn't, and this is me talking about it, it does not seem, I'm getting the vibe in the sense that I would not be shocked if we see more minutes Sunday from Ramon Walker and Robbie Armbruster and those young men, and even Ryan Elvin, than the regular guys. So, and that's no shade slight to Memphis, but UH has already clinched the regular season championship. So it does not, you know, quad 1 is okay. I mean, that is accurate. No question about that, but their seed is pretty much locked in. They're either going to be a 4 or 5 seed, and it matters more to fans than it does to Coach Sampson. So, and what are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, it doesn't make any difference to me, but 4 or 5 seed. But what are your thoughts on that?
in terms of NCAA seeding standards, I tend to agree with you, especially since the NCAA tournament's it's a neutral site, venue. I mean, it's not going to be the difference with the 4 seed. They're playing at Fertitta Center, the 5th seed they have to travel. I mean, they're going to have to be on the road regardless of wherever they have to play, depending on their region. And certainly, I think it would probably be wise if we see a lot of less minutes, certainly from guys like Jamal Shead, Kyler Edwards, who have had to play bulk of the minutes. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago when they played Wichita State in that double overtime game, both of those players played close to 50 minutes in that double OT game. And even then, I think there was this interesting stat where if say they were to, for whatever reason, they hadn't locked up the number 1 seed, they had to play their full rotation against Memphis, and then they make it to the championship game in the American Athletic Conference tournament. Then it goes from them having to play 4 games in 8 days to them having played 7 games in 15 days, which is a lot of games in a short window. So I think for sure it certainly from Houston's perspective, it'd be a lot smarter to kind of get those players a key rest, especially when they have everything locked up. And like you mentioned, at the end of the day, the NCAA tournament, is there really much of a difference between being a 4 and a 5 seed?
Not to me, especially I think UH is probably the fourth seed, so they don't have any geographic reasoning when the committee picks them, because they tried, and it's much more of an issue on women's basketball side than the men's side, try to place teams nearest to their campus for travel purposes, so they'd give the first 4 seed would be the closest location to them. But as the fourth, that's the last one. So you're going to be whatever's left. So it's not going to make a big difference there. And then 5th seed, if they're the first 5th seed, it won't make much difference. It comes down to matchups. That's what it is. So Coach Sampson touched on that earlier this week. So I'm just, we're not fans. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's something that you mentioned on the Play Action podcast. I believe that's what it was called. Where, I mean, you see that certainly that this Houston team has enough to get back to a Sweet 16 level, kind of that second weekend of the NCAA tournament, just because, like you said, they have their identity, and even they've obviously the story of the season that they've lost Marcus Sasser, they've lost Tremont Mark, and still for the most part outside of that 2-game skid that they have in between SMU and Memphis, they've played true to their identity, and it doesn't matter that they've had those players out. They've always gonna go attack the boards. They're gonna out rebound more often than not. Most teams are gonna be more physical more often than not, and defense travels, and that's one of the biggest things that Houston has. And you mentioned it. 3 of the 4 games that they've lost have been whenever they've given up 80+ points to their opponents. And that the one outlier in that game they lost, I mean, Wisconsin was on pace to score 80+ in the first half.
Right.
So that certainly seems to be a recipe for Houston in terms of when they win. Obviously, I think the biggest concern heading into the conference tournament, and obviously, of course, the bigger NCAA tournament, is going to be first health. They can't afford another injury to any players at this point. But even then, really keeping Jamal Shead, Kyler Edwards off of foul trouble, especially with how thin they are at the guard rotation, and like you said, being able to play true to their identity on defense, that's really going to be where they find success in the American tournament and in the NCAA tournament. I mean, even the SMU coach, I'm blanking on his name. I believe it's Jankovic, Tim
Jankovic.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't remember who he said. It was probably Mark Berman that he told to, where, I mean, he said that no team in the NCAA tournament is going to want to play Houston because of how they play. They have their identity, and they're going to know that for the full 40 minutes, they're going to be in a fight.
Agreed. And going to bring in Willy Gibson. Some StreamYard users have had technical issues today, I've heard, and it seems like Willie falls into that pocket. So camera issues not working for him. We're going to bring him anyway for his audio, so his dulcet tones will grace us with his on the show this evening. Mr. Gibson, how are you, sir?
Dulcet tones. Wow, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. I'm going to pull up a comment from our man D-Skills H-Town. He's become a consistent commenter on Folks Talkin Sports, and feels like talk about UH got their second win after those 2 losses. They looked exhausted during that time. I'd agree with that.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Andy.
No, I was going to say, I would think certainly more after that Memphis loss. It seemed like that's kind of the spark because I think, and Kelvin Sampson talked on it, where, I mean, when Memphis came into Fertitta Center, they wanted that game. They were the more aggressive
Yes.
team. That was something that really rarely you see where another team's more physical. They outplayed them. They forced them to make really uncharacteristic turnovers, mistakes, where I think in the first 7 minutes, they had like 8 turnovers in the first half.
Mhm.
Just from their pressure, and they controlled everything about that game. They controlled the tempo. They controlled, for the most part, they were ahead in that game, and I think that was a bit of a wake up call where, at least for the most part, certainly at the first half of conference play, where even though they didn't have Marcus Sasser and Tremont Mark, they had been able to kind of honestly cruise through the first part of the conference schedule, and then they ran into that tough stretch at SMU and then versus Memphis, and that kind of, to be honest, is probably a little wake up call that they needed in terms of, these teams are gunning at you, and that's going to be what they're going to expect in the NCAA tournament. It's going to be those teams where they're gonna be coming at you every night because they're trying to advance to win a national championship.
Right. And Andy touched on this. I was invited to by the owner of Play Action Pools / Play Action Podcast to talk about the Cougs. Christian McCollum reached out to me, so that is available on that platform. Spoke about 5 minutes. Audio version is on Play. I tweeted it out, so you go to my Twitter account, the HR Review, for the link to that. And I guess I could do a good job of putting that up here somewhere, my Twitter account. So where you can see that, there's a link to it there. But we're going to try to start working with Play Action Pods, Play Action Pools, sharing work, promotion of each other's work. They, Kristen ironically covers Notre Dame athletics, but he also does other sports, and he's trying to branch out. He's independent like we are for the most part. So we're going to try to work it together. He's going to be a guest on next week's show to get more insight about Play Action Pools, about what they do. So try to grow out, branch out, Folks Talkin Sports as well. But I want to get you guys' take on this in terms of, and Jay, you're going right where I'm going, Jay.
Yes.
In UA's case this year, and I feel this way pretty much for any team that's already locked into earning a spot, getting a spot in the tournament, the NCAA tournament. I know the players are proud and the players want to win and they don't want to lose and they want to compete, all those things. How important to you, Andy, to you, Will, is winning the conference championship? To me, it's not important at all, but I'm not a player. I'm well past my playing days. But Andy, Will, either one jump in first. How important is it to win the conference championship when you already have a spot locked up in the tournament?
It depends on the conference, and I say that because the Big Ten Conference, Ohio State basketball, yeah, it's important. It's important. I grew up as a North Carolina fan, so if Carolina lost in the ACC semifinals, another day of rest to get ready for the big dance. So that's what I mean when it depends on the conference and that particular team. So, I guess I would, to answer that question, it's a case by case basis, individual basis.
And Andy, what do you think on that?
No, yeah, from the players and coaches' perspective, I believe it's Herm Edwards that did the same, that you play to win the game. Certainly from a player perspective, Kelvin Sampson, could you imagine him saying, "No, you know what? We're just going to rest these guys for the conference."
And we've asked him that in previous years.
Last year when it was
Yeah.
the COVID, when they had they were going to be an at-large bid even if they didn't win the tournament. And I think it had been raised where because of COVID issues, is it worth risking, having a COVID outbreak on your team for a conference tournament? And they went in Fort Worth, they played, and they ended up winning the whole thing. So if they played it through COVID, I don't see that even being for rest now. Like you said, at the end of the day, even if they get knocked off when the semis and the championship game, it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter overall in the grand scheme of things. Now, obviously, from a player perspective and a coach's perspective, every game that you go out there, you're going to try to coach, you're going to try to play to win the game. But I guess I certainly understand that perspective where, hey, you know what, maybe if they lose in the semifinals, they get that extra day of rest and kind of get like closer to a full week before that first round of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and and we're talking from an outsider perspective, and Jay McElveen, it makes sense to us to rest players during the AAC tournament taking place in Fort Worth. Women's tournament starts on Monday. And we're going to talk about that in a minute because I got some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But to us, yes, it makes sense. But to the coaches and the players,
they want to win. Crazy. Yeah.
They want to win. That's one thing I've learned over the years when we talk on the pro level about it's the media that talks about tanking. Players don't want to tank. Players don't go on the floor or the football field to lose. They want to win. They're competitors. The larger scheme of things for a higher draft pick, it makes sense to us. But to the players, they want to win. They're going to compete because there's a reason that you're keeping score. As Coach Sampson said a lot. There's a reason the scoreboard's on there. So to keep a score, we're going to try to win.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, Coach, I understand that. But it wouldn't hurt me if they lose in the semifinals and, whatever, But that's how far the program has come. Because I'll say this, and I'm not sure how many people, Andy, I'm not even sure where you were. You might have been in high school 8 years ago. Where were you in 8 years ago?
Yeah, I was a freshman in high school.
Freshman in high school. Ago. Okay. The first year or two, UH lost in the quarterfinal of the AAC tournament. And I think after the second year, I put on Twitter and took some heat for it. I said, UH deserves better than accepting losing in the first round of the conference tournament. And some people replied, and it blew up over Twitter for a little bit, for our circle, the UH Twitter fan base. Are you asking for Coach Sampson's head? No, I'm asking for us to have higher standards. Because at that time, I think football was kicking butt, reigning, and we were all happy about this, or we were talking, or that's where the 8-4 fired coach, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Football raised the bar. So I just had the mindset of raise the bar and expectations for men's basketball. And has been issues since then. But now, lo and behold, if they lose in the semifinal, I'm like, whatever, because they're going to go. I know they're going to the NCAA tournament. They're going to the big dance. So that's how far the program has gone from, 8 years ago to now. And the bootleg tournament, that was, I think, the CBI. I think when UH beat Texas, and I think Daniel House hit a game-winning basket to beat the Longhorns. Oh, and that probably was Hoffine. So yeah. But that's how far the program's come, and that's great because you want to see improvement and growth. And now UH is at the point in men's hoops where they expect to win. Every time they play, they expect to win. Period. Whatever it is, they expect to win. They prepare to win, so they're going to try to win. Contrast that, Mr. Gibson, Mr. Yanez. The UH women's basketball team, 7-9 conference record. They are the 6th seed in the AAC Women's Basketball Conference Tournament. They're going to play in the first round, whereas the men don't play until the quarterfinal, second round, on Friday at noon for the men. UH women will play Monday, 5 p.m. against 11 seed Cincinnati, game on ESPN Plus. And I think the audience knows this. We need to remind the audience, people on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, Coach Ronald Huey, and Coach Kelvin Sampson were hired in the same year. Correct, Andy?
Both in 2014.
2014.
Mr. Gibson,
which
of those two coaches has had success, and which of those two coaches has not?
What do you define success? No, I'm joking. Clearly it's Coach Sampson with the level of success that he's had. At a Final Four, multiple tournament appearances. I mean, clearly it's Coach Sampson.
It's a no-brainer. which is another reason why we here on Folks Talkin Sports continue to ask, what are the expectations that UH has for women's basketball? Because it looks like 8 years in to his tenure, it looks like not making the NCAA tournament for 8 years is okay. It's acceptable. They're not going to win the conference championship this year. They had a chance Wednesday with a win to not play in the first round. Win at South Florida, win in Tampa. South Florida is one of the top 2 teams in the conference. UH Trail, what was it? Andy, at one point, what was it?
49-16, I think.
49-16 at one point. They got waxed. Okay? So they had a backdoor chance of still getting a bye if SMU defeated Temple. I think that game was at SMU because they played each other Monday and Wednesday in consecutive games. SMU won at Philly on Monday. SMU, the game was tied in the third quarter, after 3 quarters, at 42. If SMU would have won, SMU would have played Houston in the, I guess, quarterfinal round. Houston beat SMU twice. I wonder if SMU realized in the fourth quarter, maybe we need to not play so hard or coach so hard in this fourth quarter, because lo and behold, Temple got this extra urge of energy in that fourth quarter and took it to the Mustangs and won to set up a third meeting with SMU in the now going to be in the quarterfinal to set up Houston as a 6th seed, facing 11th seed Cincinnati in the first round. The winner of that game will face 3 seed Tulane in the quarterfinals. And most likely, Houston's season will end Monday or Tuesday. Because I'm not even sure they're going to win Monday. It wouldn't shock me if they lose Monday. They shouldn't lose Monday, but I wouldn't be surprised. And then we'll just see what President Couture, Chris Pesman, Dewana Chiser will do with basketball, women's basketball, and probably nothing. But there's my rant on that. So thoughts on that, gentlemen?
That's why you want to leave your fate in others' hands. I mean, that's why, and Andy said it earlier, Coach Herm Edwards, you played to win the game. I'm quite sure you look throughout the season, there was a game that Houston women's team could have won. They probably should have won, and they wouldn't find themselves in this situation. So, this is a classic example of not leaving your fate in someone else's hands.
Agreed. And I mean, I forgot, shame on me. I forgot that Coach Huey and Coach Sampson were hired in the same year. So there is a direct parallel to look at what's important to the university for sports and what's not. 8 years in, you've had success in men's basketball. NCAA tournaments, deep runs into the NCAA tournament, Final Four. Women's side, you were the first team with Team 65 last season with knocking on the door to be in the tournament. That's it. And here's the irony of it. They were Team 65 1 year too soon, because this season the NCAA expanded on women's basketball to 68 teams. Mm-hmm. And this year they're nowhere close to being one of the 68 best teams in women's basketball. So unless they shock the world and win the AAC Conference Championship, they're going to be home. I mean, I guess there's a chance they could get an invite to the WNIT. I doubt it, though, because I doubt it, because first 2 teams, UCF and USF, will go to the NCAA, and then probably third place Tulane would go to the WNIT, and then maybe if teams turn down invites, maybe UH has a chance. But other than that, they're done next week. Andy, what was the women's motto this year?
It was unfinished business.
Mr. Gibson, unfinished business. They'll be done possibly March 11th or March 12th.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And that says it all. And I wanted to last night after when the men's team was cutting down the nets. I wanted to talk to Chris Pesman on the court. I mean, damn near confront him. I mean, really confront him right there and just say, ask him, yo, man, what are you going to do about women's basketball? Because this net cutting down nets on the fella side, it's been 11, 12 years since they've had success in women's basketball. Do you care about that? I mean, I really want to, but I didn't because I'm still hoping to talk to the man one-on-one in a private setting to get some answers, because this is not a personal attack against Ronald Hughey. This is a simple question of, is your goal to get to the NCAA tournament? Because if it is, do something about it. If it's not, just keep doing what you're doing, and then stop wondering about why don't people come to our games? Why don't people care about women's basketball? Because y'all don't. Y'all don't care. So
comment.
Put it up there for the slogan next season is going to be out of business. Well, they won't be out of business. And women's hoops at UH is a profit loser. Okay, understood. But do you want to? The investment has been there. The facilities are nice, but the results are not there. And isn't that the whole point? To get results, to get to the NCAA tournament? And I've said it so many times. The job is still in demand because of the location, because of the facilities, because of now the move to the Big 12. Coaches still want this job. Coaches still believe they can do this job and lead Houston women's basketball to the NCAA tournament. Trust me when I tell you that. This job is still in demand, which may surprise some people. But if the administration is like, we're good with what they're doing, okay, then I'll stop caring. I'll stop talking about y'all and move on. And you know what I can do, gentlemen? Before hopefully Sam Khan joins us, you know what I can do? It's not this segment with y'all on screen is brought to you by Steve Saxenian. What I can do is do this. The HBU women's basketball team will look to become HBU's first team to win a Southland Conference regular season title outright when they host McNeese tomorrow, Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. in Sharp Gym. HBU women, 15-9 overall, 11-2 in the Southland Conference. UH 7-9 in the American. I know it's worlds of difference in talent, whatever, but 11-2 is 11-2 in your conference. UH, if you can't even dominate your conference, I mean, really, that's a problem. Saturday is also senior day for HBU seniors Anna McGuire and Patience Adoko. Gentlemen, I could also talk about first-year coach, Rice Owls head coach, women's basketball, Lindsay Edmonds, Willy Gibson, Andy Yanez, B Skills, Jay, folks watching on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Lindsay Edmonds, first 7-9 record with 7 players. Rice has 7 healthy players. 12-12 in overall, 7-9 in conference. They clinched a first-round bye in their conference USA in the tournament. First-year head coach, Will.
Yep.
So I can look not far at success at other women's programs. And oh, by the way, TSU women's head coach, TSU women's basketball, injuries to their program. Injuries in COVID decimated them. 11-6 in the SWAC. They're going to the conference tournament, SWAC tournament. Prairie View, 9-8 in the SWAC. Will, are you noticing a pattern here?
Yeah, I am.
So, y'all can say it. I'm throwing shade at the program. I'm not throwing shade at Coach Hughey. I'm throwing shade at Chris Pesman, Rena Couture, President Couture, and Dwana Chiser, the senior women's administrator. Simple. Do you want to get to the women's NCAA tournament or not. Simple. And that's where we are. And Coach Evans, in her first year, she's got a talented recruiting class coming in. And guys, let me say, we talk about the job Coach Kelvin Sampson's done with 9 players. She's winning with 7 players. 7. And I'm going to put this up here for David. Do you think people want to care? There are people who want to care. And the question is, and I've heard some of you people want to get rid of Coach Huey, but I don't know if they have enough pull to make that happen. So yes, those folks care. Okay. I go back. I started covering UH basketball, women's basketball, when the best player in the program's history, Chandy Jones, was there. Going back 2002, 2003. So 20 years. And Andy, you were what? 1?
What year?
2002, 2003?
I was 2 or 3.
Okay, so think about this is how much basketball has changed. Conference USA back then, 2002, 2003. Houston, DePaul, Louisville, TCU were all in the same conference for women's basketball. Conference USA was one of the best conferences for women's basketball in the country, period. And UH women's basketball was the cream of the crop. Since then, what's the opposite of cream of the crop?
Bottom of the barrel.
There you go. So that's the issue. And so there are people, I still care. But the issue is, does the administration care? Because one reason why I shifted to Texas A&M, Baylor, UConn, I get more interest and support and views when I discuss UConn and post UConn videos than anything with women's basketball, UH women's basketball. So that's why I went national, because of the lack of interest here. Ain't hurt me none. I can go to Women's Final Four every year, no problem. And joining us right now, big time, Sam Kahn Jr. from The Athletic. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. Thank you for joining us here on Folks Talkin Sports. I just had to rant about the lack of apparent support or care from UH administration about women's basketball. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about football, Coach Dana Holgerson, Big 12. What story did you break first, Sam? What were you? You were the contract numbers. Which one of those?
Yeah, I was able to get the contract details and a little bit about the staff salary pool and a few other things that they are doing in preparation for the Big 12. So it looks like the UH administration is stepping up from a football standpoint as it enters this new league for sure.
And how important, and Andy will feel free to chime in with questions for Sam, how important is it to increase the salary pool for the football assistant coaches?
That one's huge. I think that I would argue that's more important than raising Dana Holgerson's salary, which they did, but only a little bit. They didn't really go to break the bank, and they're not paying him $7 or $8 million a year or anything like that. He's getting $100,000 raises, which ain't bad for I know for one of us it wouldn't be too bad. But the staff salary pool is important because it allows you to retain coaches. Doug Belk is a perfect example, the defense coordinator, who I would argue did the best job on that staff this year. That defense was in the top 15 in multiple categories nationally, and he had opportunities to go elsewhere, whether it was in other schools or Pesman even told me NFL teams had inquired about him. So there are opportunities for him to move on, and I think 5 or 10 years ago, a guy like him probably would have moved on because UH would not have been in a place to be able to step up financially to keep him, but they were able to give him a raise to $1 million, and then they were also able to fill out some of the support staff as well. And I think that is critical, the support staff part. And we're talking like recruiting people, we're talking analysts. As we continue to evolve in college football, and we move into this deeper into this transfer portal era, and we move deeper into NIL. you need a lot of people running a recruiting department because there's a lot of things to do now. It's not just, hey, let's identify a guy, evaluate him, and offer him a scholarship. Those days are way past. It's a lot more that goes into it. There's graphic design, there's photo shoots, there's the a number of visits they do. I mean, lots of junior days that happen these days that they have to be big time experiences when prospects come on campus. So there's a lot of people that are required to do all that, and bumping that staff salary pool up allows you to hire more of those people and retain the full-time coaches you already have.
And see, I never even think about stuff like that kind of staff. See, that's why Sam is on the show right now, to enlighten me about that. And do you have any questions for Sam?
No, just kind of touching along those lines, Sam. I'd imagine that's really got to be one of the biggest reasons why the University of Houston has kind of gone all into that other football facility that they announced in their Board of Regents meetings like last week, I believe.
Yeah, that's one of the big next steps for them financially, and in terms of just competing, and that'll have a trickle-down effect to the other sports too, because once that building is built and football moves out of the Athletics Alumni Center, then you're able to give more space. That space that football uses currently now can go to other sports on campus. They can move those around. The weight room can be used for those other sports, for the Olympic sports, because right now, obviously, football uses that as well. Well, they'll have their own weight room in the new building. So that has an impact in that regard. But, Texas Tech has one of those, football ops buildings, and they're going to build, I think, a new one in their end zone facility. Baylor is working on a new building. They are right now kind of similar to U of H. They have a little bit of a bigger athletics building, but they are kind of in a wing in a athletics building that is for the entire department. Baylor in a couple of years will end up having their own football ops building as well. So that's one of those things that, A&M, Texas, all your blue bloods have. Alabama's, Ohio State, soil, they have buildings like that. And now it's coming down to those Power Fives and even some high-end Group of Fives are starting to have them. So SMU is building one in a few years. So those are things that I don't know that I'd call it necessary, but if you're trying to compete with those level of schools, which Houston will when they move into the Big 12, then you're trying to match what they have, and that'll help them do that.
Sam, how many Big 12 schools have football ops building off the top of your head?
Let me think. I was saying Tech does. Baylor's not. And when I say football ops building, I mean specifically only for football. Mm-hmm. Baylor does not. Texas does. TCU, I believe TCU's. That's a good question. I've been in TCU's, and I want to say it's only for football. I believe it is only for football, but I would have to double check that. And then Oklahoma State, I believe, does. Oklahoma does. Not sure about Iowa State, Kansas State. I haven't been in there, so I'm not sure about them. But definitely at least a handful. Probably, I would venture to guess half or more than half, probably.
And I think Chris Pesman mentioned that they're close to what, Andy, about a third of the commitment to
about 30 or 35 million in
so far committed in donations. Sam, are you part of that third?
Yeah. No, I am not. I am not. I do not get paid enough to be part of that third. But yeah, they're about a third of the way there. They need they're going to look out for naming rights. They're also going to obviously looking for a lead gift as well. But their hope is to have it done within 36 months, if not sooner than that. So a lot of that depends on how quick they raise that money. But they're trying to push it as quickly as they can.
Now let's talk about I wish I could kick in the rest, man. Because if I kick in the rest, we'd be set already, man. Colleague Joseph Duarte reported that Michael Resco and the American Athletic Conference is asking for, I guess, basically a total of $45 million per from UH, Cincinnati, and UCF. What are your thoughts on that? Is that just a starting number? I don't see a way in hell
that seems a little unrealistic to me, especially considering that UConn got out for, what was it, 17 total. It was 10, right. The 10 exit fee plus the 7 extra for getting out a little early. Mm-hmm. And I know that was a different situation because UConn UConn leaving the American does not have the impact that Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston has the American. I mean, that's going to really damage the conference in terms of its football strength and its perceived value in the national scale. So I understand why the American's going to ask for that. I cannot see a world where any of those schools will pay that. And I would imagine it's more of a negotiating. It's like hey, this is going to be where we're going to start, and we'll see what we can go from there and try to work it out. There's no doubt that these schools want to get in by 23. They're going to do everything they can. And the notification which they gave, I think it's supposed to be 27 months or something like that. So they've missed to get in by July 23. They would have had to probably notified about 5 months earlier. So they're missing it just by a little bit. We're not talking that they're jumping the gun by a year or two.
Right.
We're talking essentially one football season. But I imagine this indicates to me that there'll probably be some degree of battle, some degree of fight before they let them out. And it's probably not going to be pretty. I hope it's not as ugly as Conference USA, which right now is not pretty, with Marshall and Southern Miss and ODU. But hopefully it doesn't get to that point. But certainly I could not imagine a world where those three schools pay that much money to get out.
Go ahead.
Nor do they have. I don't know that they have the money to get out. To be quite honest with you, I don't know that those schools have $35 million laying around on top of the 10 that they've already got to pay to get out. That's the other issue.
Even a lot of those.
I don't have it. Andy doesn't have it. You don't have it, Sam. Willie's an Ohio State guy, so he won't give us any of that money. So I don't have it. Go ahead, Andy. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say along those lines on the topic of the Big 12 or the American Athletic Conference exit fees. Do you feel like for Houston specifically, but also obviously, of course, Cincinnati and UCF that come hell or high water, they're aiming to start in the Big 12 in the 2023 season?
Yeah. And I think we'll know for sure probably about a year from now. By February of next year, we should know, because it would have to play out around the same time that we're seeing the Conference USA stuff play out right now. Because schedules have to go out and they have to plan and all that stuff. So by this point, a year from now, we should know for sure. But there has been every intention, certainly from the Houston end, of everybody I've talked to ever since this happened back in last September, that the intention is to fully go in 23. BYU is already going to go in 23, of course, but the rest of those schools would like to go in 23, and that's the plan. And I think that's how the Big 12 would like it. Certainly Bob Bowlesby and company would like it that way. And I know the incoming schools would like it that way, because they would like to have their crack at the conference with Oklahoma and Texas still in it for at least a year, maybe two if you're lucky. So, and the further we go along without any movement on that front, I think it's safe to say that Texas and Oklahoma are probably in for 23. Probably cannot leave before 24 at this point, the longer we go along. But we'll have to see. Those things can change, but we'll see how it goes. But Houston for sure is one that would love to be in the conference with Texas and have at least one shot at Texas as a conference mate if it can have one in 23. So I know Houston's highly motivated to make that happen.
And Sam, has it changed? Because it really seems like more and more Texas, the consensus is that Texas and OU will be in the Big 12 in 23. Yeah,
I think so. I wouldn't say it with 100% certainty, but I certainly feel that way now. When this thing went through last summer, I would have bet money that they would have been in by 23. But now, I just don't think the Big 12 is not going to budge on how much the exit fees are. They're not. I don't think they're willing to negotiate on that front. And there's no reason that they should, because as soon as those conferences leave, it impacts the conference financially big time, and it triggers the ability for the TV networks to redo those TV contracts, which obviously they will not increase in value. I wouldn't anticipate, or if they do, I would imagine they'd stay fairly flat. But I would guess right now that probably 24 is the earliest that they go in. At this point, I think it's unless something drastic happens in the next, few months or whatever. I would imagine I can't imagine them doing it at the end of this year and just saying, okay, January 23. All right, we're going to declare now that we're going to 23. They've got to come up with essentially $80 million each, Texas and OU. Which, again, I know those schools. I don't know if they have that laying around, and they probably could raise it, but. That's a lot. That's a lot of scratch to give up to get out of a conference, just to get out of a conference early.
Yeah, and I
that's
think
2 years. Essentially, that's 2 years. If you just do the math, that's more than 2 years worth of Big 12 TV rights payouts. Like the Big 12 has been paying out $35 million a year in TV rights. So you're asking to get out, you're asking 2 years worth of TV payouts to get out for 23. That's a lot to give up.
And I mean, that's where people have really leaned, that OU would have more of a difficult time coming up with that $80 million. Well, you know, the Longhorns can go to folks like Matthew McConaughey or whatever, and let me go into my sock, you know, and we'll put in 10 socks, and there we go with $80 million, keep it moving. But talking about that, and I know, Sam, I said have you on about 10, 15 minutes, so I want to wrap it up with you. But Michael Resco, Commissioner Resco, he has already said publicly he would like the new 6 to join the conference as soon as possible, to basically rebrand, start over, whatever. So he kind of lessened his own leverage by saying that. So, you know, good for him. I mean, $45 million per. That's a hell of a start.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to recoup the money, obviously, for the new members, because they're going to take a value hit. There's no doubt about it. So they've got to maximize. And like I said, that's why I understand his position. They got to maximize what they can at this point, because just like the Big 12 is going to be irrevocably changed once Texas and OU are out from a value standpoint, the American is going to hit the same wall financially, because not to say that Houston and Cincinnati and UCF are brands of Oklahoma and Texas caliber, but their football success means that much to the conference, you know, as it currently stands. And so, like, could SMU and Memphis be those teams to make that big next step? Sure, possibly. Could UTSA be a high ceiling team to get there, you know, potentially down the road as a New Year's 6 type team, so to speak, or whatever that's going to end up being once we expand the playoff, if they expand the playoff. I don't know what the next iteration of this is going to be, but that next big group of 5 program, sure, UTSA is one of those candidates, certainly SMU, Memphis, and all them, but it takes time to build that. I mean, we're talking about UCF, who has been successful, has been to multiple New Year's 6 bowls. I mean, I think they went back to the Fiesta Bowl as far back as 2014, if I remember correctly. Houston, we're talking about a team that went to the Peach Bowl in 2015 and just went to the conference championship this year, went 12-2. We're talking about Cincinnati, who has been to multiple New Year's 6 bowls. I mean, even back to the Brian Kelly era. So those programs and that success took time to build. It took time to build that brand equity to where they got to the point where they were attractive enough for the Big 12 to invite them. The American, essentially Resco's vision is hopefully let's do it again, but it takes time. And in the meantime, it's going to hurt, you know, by losing those 3 schools, and you're bringing the new ones who are not nearly as valuable, and it's going to hurt those TV contracts, and it's going to hurt that conference financially. So that's why if you're Resco, you're trying to make all the money you can make now to spread out amongst those members and help them out and help get their budgets up. Just for a comparison's sake, I'll give you a comparison. Houston's budget right now as an athletic department is $75 million a year. UTSA's is hovering more in the 30s. So that is a big gap that we're talking about. And so that's the level. And UCF is in the 60s and Cincinnati is in the high 60s. So that is the level that you're trying to get those new schools to, which it takes a long time and a lot of effort to get those schools. And I don't know if those new schools coming in ever would get to that point.
We got a comment from David there. If UT and UH do play each other and it's only for 1 year, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know. I don't know that Bob Bowlesby is looking to do Texas any favors.
Yeah, so. that's my lean on that. I'm not sure they would do that. That game would be at Austin. I think they would schedule it at TDECU just for old time's sake.
I was gonna say, the last time Texas played, it was at Old Robertson Stadium, and there was a big hissy fit thrown by Texas fans or Texas administration, I think, because of the accommodations for the opposing fans, which were admittedly, as someone who was a student there at the time, and yes. I could walk by the temporary stands. It did not look safe to me. It was not an ideal scenario for Houston to be hosting a, blue blood program, but TDUCU is not that. TDUCU is actually a really nice facility, and they've done a good job with it. I would venture to guess that if that game does happen, and and it does end up being in Houston, it's probably at NRG because you could just make just from a sheer financial standpoint, you can make gate, that way you can put in 70,000 people in there as opposed to 40. So I think that's probably, and I don't think Dana Holgerson is going to have an issue with that, but yeah, no, I don't think the Big 12, I don't think Bob Bowles will be looking to do Texas any favors in 2023 or any time in the foreseeable future before they get out of the conference.
And one last thing for you, my man. In your opinion, talking with Sam Kahn from The Athletic, how long do you think it will take Coach Holgerson to be successful in the Big 12 leading Houston?
I don't think it'll be terribly long. I think part of it is I would love to see who the quarterback is going to be in 23. We don't know that yet because Clayton Tune will be gone. I assume the quarterback that succeeds him is not on the roster because I based on what I can gather out of Houston, I don't think they believe the next quarterback. The guy who's going to be the next guy to lead this program is on the roster at this point. So I would like to know that. Is it someone, at another Power 5 program right now that is, a young, redshirt freshman, true sophomore that wants to come back home, something like that. I would love to see who that is. The biggest challenge will be depth. How long because they're starting 11 on each side right now. I think probably this year they were good enough to play in the Big 12 with most of those teams. It's not the starting 22. It's the next 22.
Yeah.
And whenever you change a conference and you're playing higher level competition, that's where that challenge comes in. So being able to go toe-to-toe with teams that have been recruiting at that level, because these Big 12 teams, especially the top ones, the Oklahoma States, the Baylors, those types of programs, those programs are recruited top 30, top 40 level nationally consistently. That's not where Houston traditionally recruits. They probably will start recruiting a little bit closer to that level once they get in the conference. So I think initially the starting level, it's going to be, you're going to have some luck early on to be really, really good, just because, again, you're replacing a quarterback. You need some health things to break your way so that when you're not super deep and you're not have a Big 12 looking roster quite yet. I don't think it takes very long, though. I think it takes a couple of years maybe. And I believe the fact that he's been in this conference, he's played in it for 8 years. He understands it. Actually, more than that, because he was 8 years at West Virginia. He was a year at Oklahoma State before that. And then he was an assistant, before that Tech. So even more than that. But he knows the lay of the land, knows how to recruit, knows how to build a staff, knows what's needed. Right now, like I said, all the steps they're taking from an infrastructure standpoint right now are huge. So I don't think it'll be too long. I think probably a couple of years till they're starting to have the depth of a Big 12 team. But if they're lucky, again, if you hit the right quarterback and maybe you happen to have enough depth, or maybe you bring in enough transfers on the defensive line or something like that, once some of these guys have graduated, maybe you can catch lightning in a bottle and make some noise in that second year. But, A&M did that in the SEC when they first got in. They didn't have the depth, so to speak, but they certainly did have some really, really good players up front. They had a really, one-of-a-kind quarterback and a really senior-laden defense. So the circumstances kind of aligned for them that first year in the SEC. That's kind of the luck I mentioned that you need to catch to kind of just splash into the league right away. But I don't think it'll take too long, and I would not foresee them being like a 4-8 team or anything like that when they come in. I think they'll come in be ready to compete pretty well right off the bat. Okay,
cool, man. Sam Kahn, how can folks find you on social media?
S. Kahn Jr. on Twitter, and of course theathletic.com. You can search my name on there and you'll find my stories on there, my story feed. But I post most of them on my Twitter feed at SKHANJR. Appreciate you having me, guys.
As always, man. Good talking to you. Good to see you, man. Take care.
Take care. Y'all too.
Alrighty, son.
Bye.
That's what I like about Folks Talking Sports. We can do things like that. I reached out to Sam Wednesday, and like I said, I've known him for probably when he was at UH. So yeah.
When he was a student.
So yeah, when he was a student, yeah. So similar boat like to you, man. When I met him, he was at the Cougar. So yeah. So he could be somebody you look up to, follow his footsteps. So it's always good. I'm surprised. I hope he's right. And I'm curious to get Will's thoughts, your thoughts, Andy. D-Skills H-Town as well. He thinks they're going to be competitive first year in the Big 12. I hope he's right. Will?
What's competitive? I mean, losing close games and they go
500.
3-6
conference. 500.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay. And 23.
First year in the league. But he makes a great point. It definitely depends on who they get for quarterback.
Yeah.
No question.
Without question. Yeah. I don't know.
I think really you got to see if they can build on the success that they had last year and continue to carry it on into this season. I think Joseph Duarte mentioned in his Twitter space where they're going to be, in all likelihood, they're going to be probably ranked in the top 25 in the AP poll when the season starts, and they're certainly I think in a lot of the preseason rankings that I've seen, they're favored to win the American Athletic Conference. Obviously, with how much Cincinnati is losing, mainly, obviously their star quarterback in Desmond Ridder. So if they can continue, and again, the schedule that they're going to have, we talked about it, they're not going to have to play Cincinnati, and I don't even think they have to play UCF in the conference portion of the schedule. So it seems like they're going to have a lot going for them. I think really, I'm going to be curious to see how they play that Texas Tech game again. I mean, this time it's going to be in Lubbock. So that I believe it's going to be in Lubbock. But
you're right. September 10th in Lubbock. Yes, sir.
I think that's really going to be a good, certainly, obviously, again, Texas Tech's not, at least this past season, they weren't the top teams in the Big 12, but I think that's a good barometer to see, just how far is there, if there's a gap in terms of like Sam said, the top 22 and the other teams in the Big 12's top 22. I think a lot's going to be depend on how they can carry over from the success they had last season, because the last thing that Dana Holgerson and the University of Houston staff wants is to take a step back the year. I mean, from what Sam mentioned, they're trying to get into it by 2023. They don't want to take a step back in the final year in the American Athletic Conference.
I hope you're right, and I think the game at Texas Tech will be a good barometer, but I'm going to go the following week on September 17th when they host Kansas. Because, and this is kind of pessimistic, but like I said, I'm not a fan of Coach Holgerson yet, because I think he still has more room to, show me that he's a good coach and beat good teams consistently, is to see how they match up with Kansas. Because Kansas is a bottom feeder in the Big 12, but they've shown signs of life last season. So if UH does a good job against Kansas and wins that game, looks good doing it, that to me is an indication that UH won't be dead last. Okay, so they won't be the bottom. So let's go for middle of the conference. In first year, I'll take that. First year Big 12, they finish in the middle. I'm good with that. So, but definitely first things first, got to get a legit, excellent quarterback. But Mr. Gibson, comment for you from D-Skills H-Town. Back-to-back losses by Ohio State, and I'm assuming this is basketball, right, Mr. Gibson?
Yeah.
Are you concerned?
No. So we talked last week. This is last night was their 10th game in 25 days. So I mean, they're playing basically every other day, every 3 days. They had a couple reschedules in there, the Iowa game and the Nebraska game due to COVID. So no, I mean they're playing again every 2 days, every 3 days. They lost. They played without two starters the last two games. Last night against Michigan State, they did win. They did lose in Nebraska, which is a bad loss, but they lost. They were playing without two bigs. So, they have to get healthy. They play Sunday, senior night, or senior day. It's a 1 o'clock start, senior day against Michigan. And they're right now in fourth place, which is the last place for the double bye in the Big Ten tournament. Okay. So that's going to be crucial for them to hold on to that game ahead of Iowa for a double bye, so they can give them a couple extra days to rest up and get healthy. But concern, no, it's more so about the rest at this point. Get through Sunday and get ready for the Big Ten tournament.
Now share with the audience what you sent me a few minutes ago about networking that the Ohio State is doing with its student assets, student athletes?
Yeah. A couple things. Urban Meyer started this when he was head coach. It's called Real Life Wednesdays, and every Wednesday he would bring in Fortune 100 CEO, someone in the professional world, non-sports related, to speak to his team and get them ready for off the field. And so tonight they held a job fair where Ohio State football players were able to network with 50 plus companies at the yearly job fair for personal and professional development. So the entire team was present. 50 plus companies came in, and in job fair style, players were able to network and gain valuable connections.
Fantastic. So that's something too. I think UH does something similar to that. May not be on a scale of 50, but they do something like that. I know basketball does it for men's and women's basketball, I think. But so it's good to see. I think it's needed for the networking opportunities for the athletes, and even more so now in this day of NIL. So Rockets, Nuggets, about to tip off in a few minutes, gentlemen. Rockets have lost, what is it now, 11 straight? Is it going to be 12 straight?
The Nuggets, yep.
Yep, in Denver, it's going to be 12 straight. Okay.
They don't have Jokic, though.
What's that? He's not playing? I didn't even look at that. I put out there, let me see. I just screenshotted it. Yeah, he's not playing. Yeah, that's right. But,
non-COVID illness.
That's right. DeMarcus Cousins is going to be the starting center for Denver. So
that'll be interesting.
So Boogie Cousins is going to get a chance to go at one of his former teams, and he's just a different kind of big. He's not a point center as Jokic is, but he's a big dude, and the Rockets have problems going against big dudes. See if they can get DeMarcus in pick and rolls and things of that sort, which he has a problem with that. But anyway, if the Rockets don't win in Denver tonight, they got Ja and the Grizzlies at home on Sunday.
Ooh, no, that you might as well go ahead and pencil it in. It's a loss.
Will, you agree?
I do.
Okay. Then after that, Monday, they go to Miami.
That's 3. Well, what, 14?
That's 14 in a row. And the big
Wednesday.
And who'd have thought this?
Their chance. Who'd
have thought this, Will? Wednesday, March 9th. The Lakers.
That's the big shot. Nah, I think that's the get-right game for Brian and the fellas, man. I'm sorry.
Get-right game.
You don't think it's a get-right game for the Rockets? that game, man, seriously. That could be the get-right game for one of those two teams, man.
Get the get-right game for the ping pong balls, yeah. Man.
Well, we'll see. Mr. Gibson, I believe you are celebrating another trip around tomorrow, sir?
Yeah, about
right?
3 hours. 3 hours and 3 hours. T-minus 3 hours, yep.
Celebrate that safely, sir. Congrats to make another year. And mine's on the 14th. And Andy's, yours is on when? The 11th?
The 11th, yes, sir.
Okay, so
a week from today.
So exactly. Happy birthday to you. And let me put it. So D Skills H-Town. The three of us would like a birthday present from you. So make that happen, sir. So, do what you can within reason. Something to celebrate the birthdays of the Folks Talkin Sports crew. So once again, thank you to Sam Khan from The Athletic for joining us tonight and giving some insight that I hadn't really thought of. So appreciate that. And we're going to try to condense everything now to roughly around an hour show. So we're going to shut it down and talk to my guys off air for a little bit about the new venture that we're probably going to reach out and do. But let me plug, I missed it. But Andy, you got Paul Samajama up there, which I'm glad to see. But how can folks find you on Twitter?
Yeah, on Twitter they can follow me at Yanez_5. That's my personal Twitter account. I don't know if this will work. So Kris, I mean, you might need to crud. I don't think it's gonna end up working.
Okay, because I found it, so we can. That's us for the three of us right there. The individual Twitter accounts for us, as well as Folks Talk Sports for the show. So,
yeah, but no, I was just gonna plug something that we were gonna do. That's why I put at Pod Jama on I guess my name plate right under there, as you see it on the window. This Sunday, immediately following, well, not immediately following, but following the University of Houston men's basketball game against Memphis, Dayon Dunlap, a couple of the other co-hosts that we're gonna get together. We're gonna do a live Twitter space. We're gonna do a live podcast that we kind of figured out how to finally record. And it's going to be immediately following the University of Houston men's basketball game against Memphis. We'll be talking about that game. So hopefully they play at least enough starters so we can have some content out of it. But anyways, obviously, of course, the American Athletic Conference tournament that's going to happen right after. And obviously, of course, into the NCAA tournament. It is March. So what's the saying? The road starts Sunday at the end of the regular season. And I mean, this is the best time of the year. Not only for us because of our birthdays, but obviously, of course, March Madness.
Agreed. And I think we need to figure it out. I don't mind y'all using the audio. We need to see if we can do that here. Stream it. And after, I don't know how we're going to do it, after a game, whatever. But let's see if we can do it for UH in the tournament, the NCAA tournament. Have everybody day on and y'all on here, on StreamYard, and have everybody see our faces. And if some of us have Faces Radio, but just try something different. So,
yeah.
Put that out there for discussion, for thought. So if we can make that happen like that as well. And Mr. Gibson, how can folks find you, sir, on social media?
Thank you, Kris. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Will Gibson 7, as the scroll says. Also, Facebook is the Will Knowles Facebook page.
Did that cut off? I figured it out. Sorry, Will. I figured out how to use technology for a second.
Well, cool. All right. No problem. Go ahead, Will.
No, that's it.
Okay. And
let me plug that real quick.
Yeah, plug it because I can pull it up. I mean, yeah, because you have some controls too as well. So I saw.
Can you see this?
Got to pull up on the screen. Add it to the stream. So let's see if we can make it a little bit bigger. Pause my Jama.
Let's try. Can you see the Let's Rage Cougs?
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
That's all we need. Our Let's Rage Cougs. Like we made up a catchy name for it, but obviously save the date, Sunday following University of Houston men's basketball game against Memphis. Our entire Potsdam Jammer group, we're going to do a live Twitter space. So set the reminder. Feel free to engage. That's what we're looking for. We're trying to be that kind of avenue. I mean, it's something you don't really have here. I mean, I know they have the radio, of course, that does the games. Jeremy Branham does a good job for 950 KPRC 950, but right. they don't really have a post game, and that's what we're trying to do. So any U of H fans, share, spread the word.
That you guys have the same idea that I have, and I would like to see grow. And if we can combine the platforms to do it, because I think there is an audience and a need for post-game shows of that sort for UH athletics, for other teams. But
that gets the gears going, because then we could have someone, get credentialed. We could have someone do the live feed of post-game audio. We'll have a genuine post-game show.
We need sponsors to make that happen, to support us to do those things. If you believe in what we're doing, you believe in the vision that we have a lot of ideas going forward that the platforms exist, as we've said many times in previous shows. The platforms exist for us to share content with the audience and reach folks that UH doesn't reach in their lack of what am I trying to say to be nice? Leave something to be desired marketing efforts. So we have it. We have the platform. We have the ideas. So It doesn't have to always be football. We can talk football, but there are other sports as well. UH athletics, Olympic sports, all those things. The platform is there.
Year round.
We can do this year round, but sponsors, alums, we know y'all out there. Some of y'all have money. Okay? We're not that, but we are asking you to support us to help promote UH athletics in a different way. But I'm also tossing it out there because tomorrow evening, Texas Southern University at the H&P Arena, they host rival Prairie View. Women's game is first at 5:30. Men's game after that, starting around 7:30, 7:45. So Rice, TSU, HBU, we can do that too. Post-game shows, platform exists. We can do all of that. Here on Folks Talkin Sports, we can have a different name for it. We can add all be under the Houston Roundball Review umbrella, like I'm doing with football, with Adolphus A.D. Moore. We can do that. This stuff exists for us to grow the audience and grow with y'all and grow coverage and help generate interest in other sports to probably help generate revenue for UH, especially to probably get some butts in the seats for the football games. Hint, hint there. Hell, even get some butts in the seats at women's basketball, if y'all care, which doesn't look like y'all do. But anyway, we say all that. Sponsors reach out to us, get in touch with us. The technology exists for us to share content with an audience, different audience, larger audiences. So, Chris Pesman, what's the guy who got promoted? Andrew Pate, is that his name?
Andrew Pate.
Andrew Pate. D-Skills H-Town. Hit up Andrew Pate. We got this platform. There are other platforms that cover UH athletics to do things like this. But Steve Saxenian, bless him, thank him for supporting and sponsoring this show this season. But the sponsorship ends at the end of college basketball season. So we're going to be looking for another sponsor to carry us through. We want to have sponsors all the time. We can do live reads and all these great things during the show. We can play commercials during the show. I learned how to do that at my time on KWalk on lunch break. So there's different ways to reach different audiences and grow. And like I said, we're going to have Christian McCollum should be joining us next week on Play Action Podcast to talk about that platform and work with him to help him grow and help us grow. So as we wrap it up, I'm Kris Gardner. You can find me on Twitter at VHR Review. You can find us, Folks Talk Sports, on Twitter. Houston Roundball Review has been around since 1994. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Wrapping it up. Mr. Yanez is so young, he did not recognize the intro song that I did on my YouTube shorts today. But Mr. Gibson did. Kudos to you, Mr. Gibson, for recognizing it. Absolutely. And did I do okay, sir? Did I had the bars down right? It sounded good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for that. So yes, you can go to Houston Roundball Review on YouTube and check out the YouTube shorts. I'm trying to do that a little bit more. Just another way to reach out to a different audience. It's like a 45-second to a minute hit. If I drop some, I may start singing some more, man. Maybe some more old school jams because the new stuff I really don't know. So, but yeah, all those things we say to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Folks Talkin Sports on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. We'll see you next week. And we could make a prediction about UH Memphis, but I think Memphis is going to win. Okay, and I think it means more to Memphis than it does to UH. But
I'm not going for the sweep.
UH players and the coaches, they're going to try to win. Okay, they're going to compete. But if they lose, they lose. They're still conference champs for the regular season. They're still going to be fine in the NCAA tournament and just keep it moving. So, as always, thank you very much for your comments. D-Skills H-Town, David, Jay. Thank you as always. We'll see you next week. Everybody, take care.